Welcome back to The Explainer. Look, if you've ever pulled up a birth chart and felt your stomach drop seeing Mars sitting right there in the seventh house, trust me, I get it. It's got quite the reputation, right? But today, we're taking that anxiety and throwing it right out the window. We're going to demystify this incredibly fascinating placement, and by the end of this, you'll see how to actually master that fiery energy instead of fearing it. Let's get into it. So I want you to think about this question for a second. Why does love sometimes feel like an absolute battlefield? If you have this placement or, if you're dating someone who does, you already know relationships are rarely just simple. There's this deeply embedded, almost electric tension. It's like calm actually feels incredibly uncomfortable. You're living in this intense reality where passion is just constantly colliding with friction. There's a quote from our sources at Novigrad that really hits the nail on the head here. It says, Mars in the seventh house burns. Love feels alive, yet uneasy. I mean, wow, right? That perfectly sets up the fire metaphor we're looking at today. Because this placement, it creates electric bonds. We are absolutely not talking about quiet, passive affection here. We're talking about hearts meeting through sparks and storms, an energy that literally thrives on intensity and constant motion. All right, part one, the warrior meets partnership. Okay, so first up, we have Mars. Think of Mars as the ultimate warrior. It's the planet of our drive, our raw, unfiltered passion, our competitive energy, and, yeah, war. It represents our fierce independence and our aggressive ego. Mars is that part of us that just wants to conquer, It wants to lead and take immediate, decisive action without stopping to ask anyone for permission. Now, take all of that intense warrior energy and contrast it with the seventh house. In Vedic astrology, the seventh house, Kalatrabhava, is all about marriage, committed partnerships, peace, and diplomacy. It's naturally ruled by Libra, so this house is desperately seeking harmony and compromise. It's essentially the mirror to ourself, the exact space where we're supposed to seamlessly blend our lives with someone else. And that brings us right to the central friction of this whole explainer, fire in the house of peace. I mean, what happens when the literal planet of war decides to take up residence in the house of compromise? Suddenly, the warrior is being asked to be a diplomat. It's an inherently volatile mix. You've got this deep desire to conquer, crushing headfirst into the absolute necessity to cooperate. Moving on to part two, passion, conflict, and marriage. Notice the stark duality going on here. The quote-unquote bad traits are really just the flip side of the good ones. On the one hand, Mars brings this incredibly intense loyalty, deep devotion, a fiercely protective nature. But on the other hand, when that fire gets mismanaged, it can flip in a heartbeat into possessive control, dominating behavior, or even explosive anger. It's a type of love that is constantly testing the endurance of both people involved. Our sources actually point out a really fascinating psychological root for this. They fight, then fall again, because struggle literally feels like love's language. Deep down, folks with this placement often harbor a profound fear of betrayal. So because they're so fiercely loyal themselves, they unconsciously test the steady love they actually crave. They just want to see if their partner will endure the fire and stay. They want proof of loyalty, but they really struggle to just have faith in it. Because of all this energy completely dictates who you attract. A passive, super submissive partner, that's rarely going to hold the sustained interest of someone with Mars in the seventh house. Instead, they naturally draw in a Mars-type spouse. They end up marrying people in action-oriented, assertive professions, military, police, surgery, engineering, athletics. They absolutely need a partner who is strong-willed, dynamic, and definitely won't run for the hills the second the sparks start flying. All right, section 3, understanding Manglik Dosha. So, Manglik Dosha happens when Mars sits in specific houses in a birth chart, the 1st, 4th, 7th, 8th, or 12th houses. But here's exactly why the 7th house is so crucial. Mars in the 7th is widely considered the absolute most significant Manglik placement. Why? Because Mars isn't just throwing its energy toward marriage from across the chart, it's sitting directly inside the house of marriage. The partner is experiencing the full, unfiltered 100% force of Mars every single day. And there's this incredibly fascinating karmic perspective from our sources on why someone even gets this placement. It suggests that this relational intensity actually comes from past life karma, specifically lifetimes spent as warriors who literally fought right alongside their partners. The partnership was defined by shared battle, survival, and struggle, and that imprints this intense, sometimes combative dynamic right into their current life. But listen, this fire isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. It brilliantly illustrates how the fiery nature of Mars changes dramatically depending on the specific zodiac sign it's in. Like in Aries, Mars is highly aggressive, bringing strong leadership but maybe some risky decisions. In Capricorn, Mars is exalted, meaning it's operating at its absolute highest potential, bringing this disciplined, slow, steady success to a partnership. But put it in Cancer, and that energy turns inward, causing highly emotional reactions and this fiercely protective attachment. The sign totally colors how the fire burns. Let's pivot a bit for Section 4, boardrooms and business battles. Just like in marriage, we see a massive duality in the business world too. Because the 7th house also rules contracts and public dealings. When it's channeled well, Mars in the 7th creates this decisive, fearless, and incredibly collaborative leader who can navigate complex negotiations in their sleep. They're magnetic. But when the ego takes the wheel, well, it leads to impulsive decisions, zero trust, and massive ego clashes. They can easily become that dominating partner who totally alienates their co-founders just because they refuse to compromise. That being said, this aggressive energy is actually a massive superpower in the right context. They thrive in entrepreneurship, where you have to take risks. They absolutely excel in law and litigation. I mean, fighting for a position is literally the job description there. They also do incredibly well in PR, politics, defense, basically any field that requires serious advocacy, fighting injustice, or just fearless competition. Which brings us to Section 5. Let's talk about calming the fire remedies. Okay, so remember, this placement is a tendency. It's not a fixed destiny. Millions of people have amazing, successful relationships by just applying some highly practical behavioral solutions. For starters, our sources strongly recommend delaying marriage until at least age 28. This gives that raw, untempered force of Mars time to mature alongside your first Saturn return. Second, practice conscious relationship pauses. Actively try to understand before responding so you de-escalate fights. And third, this is huge. You have to channel that excess Martian energy into daily physical exercise. You literally need to burn off the physical friction so it doesn't just discharge as anger aimed at your partner. Now, alongside those behavioral steps, Vedic astrology offers some really profound spiritual remedies to pacify Mars on a more subtle, energetic level. These include chanting the Mars mantra, Om Angadakaya Nema, to help reduce impulsiveness. Regularly reading the Hanuman Chalisa or offering a beta leaf garland to Lord Hanuman is also highly recommended, since Hanuman represents the disciplined, devoted channeling of enormous strength. And for really severe conflicts, there are specialized fire rituals, like the Mangal Dosha Nivaran Homa, that can be performed to help restore that sacral harmony. Ultimately, the whole goal of all these remedies, both the behavioral and the spiritual ones, is beautifully summed up in this phrase from our sources. Fire can warm, not burn. That's what it's all about, finding balance. It's about learning love through surrender. When you actually do the work, that crazy intensity turns into a patient, steady devotion instead of a consuming war. Anger transforms into honesty. And that fierce loyalty, it no longer needs constant proof. And that leaves us with one final essential thought for you to take away from this explainer today. If you have this placement, you've been given an immense, deeply passionate energy. The stars essentially handed you the raw materials of a warrior, but you are the one holding the pen to your own destiny. So the question is, how will you choose to use your quiet fire? Are you going to let it consume your partnerships, or will you use it to build a warm, unshakable, and fiercely loyal foundation? The choice is entirely yours. Keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.